If you're considering putting a fire pit in your backyard, but you're really strongly thinking about picking up a smokeless fire pit, watch this entire video. A year and a half ago, I purchased the top-rated fire pit on the market, which was the Solo Stove, and I've learned a lot about it over that time. I'm going to share all of it with you in this video. Let's get right to it. Jumping right into the pros, my number one is size. Solo Stove makes 3 different sizes of their fire pit: the Ranger, which is the smallest, the Bonfire, and the Yukon, which is the largest. The Bonfire was the perfect size for us as far as our backyard is concerned. I also read that if you wanted to go with the Yukon, that you were just going to fly through the wood, and every person that I've spoken with who owns one has echoed that exact point. I've not really blown through a lot of firewood unless I'm burning my fire pit for several hours at a time, but the size leads into benefit number 2, which was the biggest one for us: portability. I don't have a location today where I want to leave my fire pit, so I need to take my fire pit and put it away. I don't want to leave it in the yard. The size of this fire pit makes it very easy for me to pick it up, carry it, and put it into our shed for storage, bring it out when we want to use it, plunk her down, and roll with it. The fire pit itself is not incredibly heavy, so it is very easy to pick up and move around wherever you need it to go. Number 3, it's honestly the accessories. There are a ton of accessories that you can get for your fire pit. We have the rain cover for it to ensure that if it does start to rain, and I did leave it outside by mistake, that it doesn't get wet, because you do not want your Solo Stove to get wet. I also bought the hard cover for the top of it. I like that because when the fire gets down to the smoldering embers at the very end, I want to put something on top to ensure that nothing will fly in, cranking that fire back up again. We've got trees all around the property here, so I want to make sure that it does extinguish itself over time. But it is not a snuffer, please note that. Solo Stove also makes a lot of different accessories if you want to cook with your Solo Stove, if you want to put a brush cover on top of it. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that you can get for your stove. My kit came with the ring for the top of the fire pit and also the stand underneath. I actually kind of like the stand because it gets it up off the ground, just in case I've got the cover on and it's going to rain. It doesn't splatter stuff back up onto the side of the stove itself. And finally, for me, the biggest benefit was the fact that it actually is smokeless. As I've gotten older, I've developed pretty ugly asthma, and when I get in front of a fire pit that has a ton of smoke, it wrecks my lungs for the next few days. Getting a smokeless fire pit was huge for us because I can actually sit in front of our Solo Stove for hours and not have a problem that night, the next morning, or the day after. Now, the design of the Solo Stove is super cool. You'll notice around the inner ring all of these different holes. The way that the air flows through the Solo Stove creates what they call this double burn effect, which you see right here. When it really gets cranking, you'll see the burn coming out of the holes in addition to the logs inside the fire pit. This is what creates the atmosphere so that it becomes completely smokeless. I don't know all the science behind it. I just know the darn thing works. But with the pros do come some cons. The first of which is cleaning the Solo Stove. I've basically come up with an ash pile, which isn't huge in my yard, where I just turn it over and I shake out all of the leftovers from the prior fire. You can take a paper towel or another cloth and wipe around the inside if you wanted to. If you know of a better way to clean your Solo Stove, please put some comments under this video to share with everyone else watching. But you can't hose it off inside, and I honestly wish I could do that. But I understand with the material that they use for the stove, water is not its friend. Second, depending on the size Solo Stove that you get, you're probably going to run into some log limitations. Sometimes if I'm buying firewood at the grocery store because I don't have anything here that's available, I find that the logs are a little too long, so I have to trim them down. Honestly, it's a little bit of a pain in the butt when you're just trying to get outside with the family to hang out in front of the fire pit. Keep that in mind. Third, you do have to get a little bit closer to the Solo Stove to feel the heat. I'm not trying to paint the picture of you cuddling up next to it or anything like that. That would be kind of super weird. But a normal fire pit that has no sides would allow the heat to radiate out to the sides. With the Solo Stove, it kind of goes up and out. You don't have to get super close, but you will notice that you'll have to get a little bit closer than you would with any other outdoor fire pit. The final con, it's the price. The Solo Stove is not inexpensive, and as you get the kits or the other accessories, that cost will start to add up. If you want to save a little money, I highly recommend waiting for some of the holidays, especially Black Friday. That's when I've seen the best deals, and I've watched the price on this throughout the last year and a half. But there are two things that you need to know to make this fire pit truly smokeless. Number one, keep your logs below the holes. If the logs get above the holes, it stops that double burn effect from happening in the fire pit. And number two, you really have to get the heat cranking inside of this fire pit for it to become smokeless. Any fire pit is going to have smoke when you initially light it. But once you get the fire rolling in the Solo Stove, man, that's when the smokeless really kicks in. But you have to get that heat cranking and get those flames rolling in order for that double burn effect to happen. Now, despite all of those cons, I highly recommend this fire pit. It is well worth the spend. If you're hesitant, I would not hesitate. You get a solid smokeless fire pit, and you're not gonna walk away smelling like you stood in front of a fire pit for 12 hours. Until the next time, keep doing it yourself.